and welcome to a special edition of World Talks on TVP World from the European Parliament in Strasbourg. I'm your host, Sasha Farbach, and I'm delighted to be joined here now with two MEPs. On my left is Petras Auštrevičius, Renew Group from Lithuania.
Thank you.
And then on my right, Arkadiusz Mularczyk from the ECR from Poland.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you both, gentlemen, for joining us here. The plenary is now winding down. This has been an intense week, but I think very much one of the main focuses has come because of the disasters, the terrible things, the flooding in Central and Eastern Europe. I want to start with you, Mr. Mularczyk, about how you sense the European Union has reacted to this. We know that von der Leyen is now in Poland. We know that certain types of emergency funds has been tapped already to assist. Has the European Union reacted enough? What more can be done?
I'm glad that in this session we start debate about the situation in Central Europe, especially Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Hungary, Austria, because there is a lot of losses, material losses, human losses, and we need to do everything what we can here in European Union to support these cities, villages, regions, and especially people. We know that many people was died. The losses are very high, strong, because we see the streets, we see the cities, and this is completely ruins places. So as I see these pictures, I'm thinking about the Second World War, yes? Because this is absolutely disaster for these places, especially for Poland, from Dolny Śląsk. And so I think the reaction European Union is good, because we had a debate, we passed a very important resolution, and I hope we very quickly send subsidies to this region to renovate, to rebuild, and to pay some kind of compensation for the people.
Right, and I think it's also very much about the immediate concern right now, reacting. I know that we have the civil protection mechanism that's been tapped many times since it was created, or I think over 400 times. But some of the conversations hearing with MEPs is that there's not enough money here, Petras, and more could have been done. I know it's easy to blame, but how do you see the reaction by the European Union institutions?
Well, I mean, so we can't predict where the climate change turns to us. I mean, the disasters like in Central Europe, devastating floodings, destructions, losses of life, I mean, well, there is a feeling that it might become more often, more widely spread. So, but what is important, not just the political attention which was given to the events from last week and still ongoing this week in this part of Europe, but again, I mean, with the solidarity clause, what we can do to assist. I mean, financially, materially, I mean, providing some emergency assistance as such. Well, I think we can't turn away. Doesn't matter, floods in Central Europe or wildfires in Portugal, as it's going on for the time of being. We have to be in full support to those people, because, I mean, if locals are left from the European assistance, they will start, questioning, I mean, why we are in such a situation. So that's why, indeed, funds must be increased for those emergency situations. Definitely, if they are not used, I mean, by the end of the year, they can be probably redirected, I mean, for other needs. But I think this is essentially important for Europeans. I mean, the sense of solidarity and real support. Sometimes I agree with some critics, as support comes a bit at later stage, but it's better later than never. And that's why I think those people must be supported as much as they needed, because some of them lost everything. I mean, they stand as, newly born, let's call it. So that's why I think the overall discussion was very positive in this regard.
Okay. But if I can add something, I think some colleagues from left and liberal side in European Parliament try to connect these tragic events in Central Europe with the climate changes. But I couldn't agree with that because I'm experienced politician. I'm in Polish Parliament more than 20 years. So I remember the same flood, the same tragic events 10 years ago or 20 years ago. In our history, I examined that there was a lot of the same tragic things in Poland and in Central Europe because there was a lack and there is the gap of prevention. So I think we need to spend more money to how we can protect cities, villages and people, not only talking about the climate changes, because in my opinion this is not true. The most important thing is protection, and we need to try to regulate the rivers and to build a construction who can protect the people.
All right. I mean, that's an interesting point you've raised. We're hearing right now, Mr. Mularczyk has said it's not an issue here. Climate change is not a factor. I think some may well disagree with that, Petras. Do you think there's a point there?
We might question, I mean, the level of impact. I see more extremes coming. I mean, look, this summer, I mean, again, is an illustration. Temperatures are breaking records. Never before we see in northern parts of Europe, I mean, temperature well above 30. And this temperature doesn't come for one day. It stays for a week, and sometimes even within the month, I mean, we see certain tendencies. And these extreme impacts, we have to, if we, at earlier, decades before, we had some dams, built for, let's say, plus 20% of water capacity. Now we have to build maybe 30, 40 plus in order to, to sustain or to deter impacts which might come from very extreme change over the sudden. But definitely, it will repeat itself in future, so that's why it's a lesson for us.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at also empirical evidence, we see though that tragedies like this, it's not just flooding in Central and Eastern Europe. We've seen higher temperatures, as Petras just mentioned. Those terrible fires also in Portugal last summer as well, devastation. So maybe let's meet in the middle and say that we need more in terms of preparation, more in terms of reaction. So that's the key. How do we stand here? Because that requires a lot more resources, more money. Is the EU equipped for that? Do we need to top up the emergency funds? How are we going to be more prepared?
I think we need to prepare a special program for these territories which are in danger. Especially, I think that in Central Europe, the territory where is the lot of problems with the flood, there is the mountainous territory. So, Carpathia region, Tatra region, and these places where when the rain very quickly, the rain very quickly spread from the mountains and create a big river. So I think we need to prepare a special program for the mountainous territory, especially in Czech, Slovakia, Poland. In that countries, there is every 10 years we have the same situation.
Right, so more targeted, more regionally focused.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, so that will require more debate, more discussion, more money, I think. I want to also
and capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. Capacity as well. But I also want to just get your comments briefly because this week we're supposed to have Mr. Orban here, supposed to be sharing the priorities for the rotating EU presidency. Because of the flood damage and the emergency, he has remained in Hungary. But he's also said, I believe in the last sort of 24 hours, that if he had waited for the EU, there would be even higher levels of water. So I'm just curious, Petras, what you make of his statement, if he might be using this once again in his own ways.
I mean, we hear very different critics expressed by Mr. Orban, with whom I highly disagree on his even recent decisions. I mean, to open up EU gates for Russians and Belarusians. It's up to the political representatives to comment. But if him to follow and this logic, even in the emergency support or civil protection or civil defense EU capacity building. So the logic would go like, okay, I mean, let's leave it for member states, to handle. I mean, member states, of course, I mean, primarily responsible for meeting requests and, you know, starting rescue operations as soon as possible. But I think we are in a situation when we have to think about the EU level civil defense or protection and emergency capacities. I see it as a very part of the maybe emerging defense union of European Union. And that's why I think these arguments by Mr. Orban are irrelevant because, I mean, everybody looks at certain support, even financial support. I see it as a kind of political debate. It's up to him. But I believe if you follow people's expectations on the ground, they would gladly accept support coming from Budapest as well as from Brussels. So that's why let's be frank and let's better focus on capacities.
All right, indeed. I do want to ask also about one of the major topics here of the day, also Ukraine, support for Ukraine. There was that draft resolution passed overwhelmingly pretty much that we should be removing those restrictions of using EU-made weaponry to strike into Russian territory. So, Mr. Mularczyk, on that front, I mean, critics would say this is going to antagonize Russia even further. How do we respond? Is this going to lead to more? What's the policy now from this parliament and your group for support of Ukraine?
I think we need to be united in Ukraine, with Ukraine. I had the speech during this plenary session. It was the 17th September. For Poles, this is the very important date because 85 years ago there was the Russian attack, Soviet Union attack to Poland, and Poland was partitioned. So in our national memory, this is the very important date. And for Poles, because we remember Russian occupation when Polish people was taken to Siberia, we remember the Katyn massacre, and when the 1,000 Polish people was taken to the prison. So we see the same situation now in Ukraine. So this situation unite Polish people. Even that we have some problems with the cooperation in the historical aspect between Poles and Ukrainian governments and society, we understand that we need to be united and we need to support Ukraine on many different aspects, military, humanitarian. So we do that. So I think this debate was, I think, quite good because we will be support Ukraine in the next month and years.
Okay, so unity is key. I'm conscious of the time. Just closing now, Petras, on that unity. Does this parliament have that? Does the EU have it? What more can we expect because of this resolution passed now?
You know, openly speaking, I'm very glad. I mean, there have been 424 out of 720 who voted in favor of this resolution. And, you know, I mean, giving and sending this message, very strong political message, we will stand as long and we will do whatever it takes, I mean, to support Ukraine. It's a political will, expression of political will. You know, Russians are very sensitively, you know, monitoring the political, let's say, environment in Western Europe. I mean, how long we will have this will, because, of course, I mean, after 2.5 years, we see emergence of so-called peace camp. I mean, calling almost for surrender of Ukraine. But it would be a disaster, I mean, for whole Europe. If Ukraine fails, if Russians prevail, so who is next? What is next? So that's why it's a very strong, very timely expression of the political will, and I'm looking forward that we will build a program, actions, I mean, to implement and translate this will into material, technical, military, as well as humanitarian support for Ukraine.
All right, we'll have to see how that pans out. It does seem there is unity on many sides here in the Parliament and across the EU as continues to help Ukraine. I want to thank you both very much, Arkadiusz Mularczyk and also Petras Auštrevičius, for joining us here today. And thank you for watching. Sasha Farbach here for World Talks in the European Parliament. Goodbye.